All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday morning live stream. I hope you can hear me. We had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning getting started. I was unable to get my phone camera to connect to the laptop here, which I am streaming from. So we are currently using the inbuilt camera on this Mac laptop, which is not super high quality. Let's see if we can change to the other cameras. We've got the overhead camera, and then we've got another camera to the back where I can kind of show the overhead of what is happening, and also maybe some stuff from the Euro rack in just a moment. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working on a new Digitakt Soundbank that I've been putting together. Electron just put out an update for the Digitakt and for their transfer software, which allows us to now back up projects in the Digitakt, including samples in those projects and also patterns in those projects to one file that we can easily share with others. So I've been working really hard on putting together another Digitakt Soundbank with all new sounds and a grip of all new patterns. And that's what we're going to be working on today. And we're going to be extending some of the patterns that I've created already inside of this bank, and we're going to be creating hopefully some patterns from scratch today inside of this bank as well. Now this is a commercial sound bank that I'm working on. It's not just a fun casual project, so I will be definitely taking probably more time than usual getting things just the way I want them. I'm not probably going to be moving quickly just because of the live stream aspect today. So I just want to let you know right off the jump that my intention is to take as much time as I need to keep the creativity in place, hopefully where it needs to be as I'm creating today. A little bit flustered as I had some technical difficulty getting started. Whew, so if I'm coming across red, it's because I've been struggling with cameras for the last 20 minutes. Let me take a look at the chat. Hey, what's happening, Connor? What's happening, Tony? What's happening, Fade Man? What's happening, Sean? Can you guys hear me okay? And can you hear the music okay when we start to get loud? Just a little bit more level to the stream, I think, here. Just let me know if it's distorting anyone's phones or anything like that today as we continue on with the stream. This is just one of the patches that I put together. Mic needs a boost. Okay, somebody said that last week, and then I distorted the entire stream. I'm going to turn the mic up just a tiny bit, because maybe the answer is to turn the music down rather than to turn the mic up, if you get my drift. I've now turned the mic up, and maybe what I can do is to turn the volume on the music down the tiniest little bit to compensate as well. Let's see here. And maybe I can talk a little bit louder as well. How are we doing now? Is that a little bit better with the even distribution, hopefully, between my voice and what's playing here? Let me maybe scroll to a different, even more like maybe louder pattern inside of this bank, so maybe we can get some more level check here. That's probably even lower. That should probably be just fine for what we need today. What I'm doing is I'm making this bank to be a completely freestyle bank with no specific genres, meaning there's going to be patterns in this bank from all sorts of electronic music genres. Everything from that chill dub techno that you know I'm into to like up-tempo drum and bass music grooves as well. Hey, what's happening, Ed? All right. Turn yourself up more. Okay. Well, I'm really concerned about the amount of the level on me here, because this is the loudest that my voice has like ever been now on a stream, basically. So I don't really care if you guys can hear me as well as you can hear the music that we're creating. A lot of times on these streams, like my voice is crazy loud and the music is way down here. And I really I get frustrated when I watch those back, I'll tell you what. And now in the headphones, basically all I'm hearing is like me, and the music is way down here. But these streams are about, the music. So I'm gonna adjust that back again. Now I'm getting a weird thing on the left and right channel there. That's not what I want. Come on. There we go. All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward with these levels, you guys. Just let me know if you can't hear me or something. What we're going to do today is we are going to start off by trying to create another empty pattern from scratch. What I'm doing in this bank is I'm creating a whole bunch of patterns, like I said, in tons of different electronic music genres. And I'm going to create rather, two different variations of each pattern in the bank. So we've got a little bit more variation for the end user to work with and hopefully be inspired by. Now, I currently don't have any of the B patterns created for any of the patterns that I've started. So today we're going to be working on creating some new stuff from scratch, and we're also going to be potentially working on extending out some of the patterns that I've already created into A and B variations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into bank C on the Digitakt here, and I'm going to pick an empty pattern for us to work with. Cool. And what we're going to do off the jump here is we are going to go ahead and just clear out the samples that are by default assigned to these pads by just hitting the pads and clearing out the sounds that are on the pad so that I've got a completely blank project to work with here. I'm also a chronic oversaver, so we're going to hit function and save at this time. I'm going to be doing that all the time during this project. I really encourage you all to be chronic oversavers as well so that you don't lose anything you've been working on, because you just never know. If you make a bunch of mistakes, there's not a whole bunch of undo in the Digitakt. If you have a little bit of a power fluctuation and it triggers the power on the Digitakt and you lose a couple of hours of work, that's pretty frustrating. So I definitely encourage you all to be chronic oversavers. All right. So what let's do is I've started a little tiny melodic groove in the Euro rack system. Make sure I'm on the right camera here. And as I flip this around to the Euro rack system, and maybe we can see Opie in the shot down here. Hey, Opie, what's happening? He's the best studio buddy. Okay, I can play this groove, and then this is just, it's not really a groove, it's just a melodic idea. This is coming out of the Mutable Instruments Braids module, and we're using their vowel synthesis model to get like a formant and kind of like that A, E, I, O, U type of sort of vowel sound here. I'm going to just play the example here. Hopefully you guys can hear that real well. And we're going to let that just play away in the background, right? Now, all right. Actually, I've put together where, actually I really want to show the routing. Sorry about that with the camera here. I'm taking an out from an output module in my system, okay, and I'm running the output on this directly into the audio interface that's attached to my large Mac. This is a Tascam US1608, but the audio interface here is, pretty much irrelevant. The point is just that I'm running the Eurorack system directly into my big Mac here, okay, so this Mac over here, and I'm running the FabFilter Pro Q3 equalizer plugin here, and I've done a tiny little bit of EQing on the mids of this sound already, so that it's got just a tiny little bit more, clean and more polished tone before we actually sample it into the Digitakt. So to recap real quick, we're just taking the audio from my Eurorack, we're running that into Ableton, and then I'm taking my audio output from Ableton, and I'm running that directly into the back of the Digitakt so that we can sample into the Digitakt from, the signal that's going through Ableton Live here. So if I go to our sample page, straighten that out a little bit there, and I go over and press play again on the Eurorack system to get that melodic groove going. We should now be hearing that. We should also be seeing that input level here on the Digitakt. Let's sample this. right, we've got that sampled. Now I'm going to go ahead and come over to the Eurorack system and just turn that off at this time. Now we can see what kind of an actual audio level we're working with. I hope that preview wasn't too loud. Hey, what's happening, Christoph? Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's see here. That's a little bit lower in volume, and hopefully you guys can still hear that. One of the things I really like about using the Digitakt, for sampling directly into it, is that we can really zoom in here, right, to the sample, and we can really we can zoom in, right? So we can really get a finite adjustment of where we're actually, you can, really see here where these sort of transients as the different notes in that arpeggio come through. And we can just sort of arbitrarily start picking where we'd like to trim this out from. Dun, dun, dun. 1, 2, 3, so maybe here. Now, because it's, this was created in real time through, actual synthesis, there's some clicks and pops in the sound as it's kind of doing its morphing a bit. And what I want to do is I want to sort of zoom around in here and find kind of like the best little section to my ears to trim out and start working with. I don't think that's it, so we're going to keep scrolling through some more of these possible transients that I can start the downbeat on. Dun, 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 2, 3, so maybe this one. Okay, just like I said in the beginning about how I'm going to be taking a little bit of extra time today because this is a commercial product that I'm working on today and not just a fun one. Normally, like I would, that sounds pretty decent right here, but there's a tiny, tiny little click in the second half of that I don't want to come through. Yeah, so I'm going to keep trying. Dun, 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 dun. We're going to see if we can't find another transient to pick from instead. Not that one. Dun, 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 dun. Hold on, that might be it. I don't really like that dun-dun-dun. See if we can go back a little bit further in. Dun, dun, dun. So maybe this one. And there it is, absolutely. Now I'm going to zoom in. Basically, what that was about is I've been, making and editing samples for like 20 years, and my ears are really, really sensitive to tiny little clicks or pops, like in the recording of those samples that you don't want, your end user to be, struggling with. So I'm going to do whatever I have to do, to get the samples that I make for my packs, like as absolutely clean as possible, for the end user. And so we're going to zoom in on this. We're going to trim off that beginning, and now we're starting to get a little bit more clear, visual of what this is looking like. Okay, what I want to do is I want to sort of trim off the end of that sample, so it's basically just a little bit of a rhythmic loop. I think we want to trim out right about here, and we'll do our best to sort of zoom way, way in and try to, get the sample to cut on a zero crossing so that we're not going to hear a click at the end of the sample. We'll test this out. Got too many notes in there, actually. Got that extra downbeat that I don't want, so we're going to go ahead and go in further, and I think it's here. Let's try that. Okay, we're getting that click at the end, so now it's kind of gonna sort of fine tune where I'm chopping at the end of the sample to try to get rid of that click at the end. Still there. Let's see what we can do here. Actually, if I maybe go this way with it a little bit more, let's try that. Maybe I'm not going far enough this way. Yeah, let's try more like here. Yeah, that's a lot better. Maybe I can even squeeze it a little bit closer. Excellent. Let's go ahead and trim that as it is. And there we have a cool little sample that was just a little melodic idea that's come out of my Eurorack system. what I'm trying to do with a pack like this is you've got really limited space inside of the Digitakt. It's not like a lot of the newer samplers where you can just load gigs and gigs and gigs of samples into it. It has a limitation of 1 gig of samples in its internal memory. So the sounds that you sample into it are going to want to be a lot more, specific and purposeful than just loading it up with, a lot of random sounds. So what I've done in this bank is I've tried to collect sounds from all over the room and all kinds of different gear that I've got in here. I've got a bunch of cool sounds in this bank from the Virus Darkstar. I've got some other really cool sounds in the bank that are from the Eurorack. And I've also got some sounds in this bank from like virtual synthesizers and some of the sounds that I programmed in those. So I'm just basically trying to fill it up with as much, interesting and inspiring is the word I'm looking for, content as I can, so that the end users have some really interesting stuff to work with, and not just stuff that all came from like the same source, like the computer, you know what I mean? So let's go ahead and save this at this time. Let's save this, we're going to clear this and give it a name. Let me just double check what the tempo was in my Eurorack system. It was 135 beats per minute, so we'll go ahead and label this accordingly. This is 135, and this is it's actually a sound from the braids module, so I'm going to go ahead and label it as such, braids. And I can't remember exactly what key we're in at this exact moment. Let me see if I can find out by playing the groove again into Ableton. We're not going to hear that right now because it's just not coming through the Digitakt. But I can bring up a plugin and just kind of double check my key that I'm working. I think it was C minor. The computer kind of can't decide if it's C minor or C sharp minor. Let's just call it C minor for now, and if we need to adjust that later, we probably can. So let's see, let's go 135, braids, C minor, and let's just, we'll just call it that. Cool. And we're going to save this, and let's just arbitrarily assign it to an empty slot. And whoops, I'm sorry, function, and no gets rid of that. Sorry about that. We'll stop the Eurorack playing in the background. And now we've got that sample to work with, and it's over here on this key, pad rather. Now, if I go into the amplitude window, I can change, how long the release is on this sample. For instance, I find that if I want it to only play when I'm holding down the pad, a release time or decay time rather of about 4 usually is pretty good. You hear what I'm saying there? I'm going to bring the volume up on this sound. C sharp, you think, Connor? We'll find that out in just 1 second, actually. Let's do that now before we get much further into this, shall we? Let me just bring up a synthesizer. If I change the camera, I can show you that I've got a little MIDI controller out today. This is the Launch Key Mini from Novation, but the controller itself is, not really relevant. It's just so that we can play some sounds inside of Ableton if we want to today. And so, for instance, it is definitely C sharp minor. Let's score 1 for a rabid bat, everyone. And what I want to do is I'd really like to rename that sample. I'm not sure how easy that is to do is the problem. Probably not something to do on a live stream, but let me just double check that. How would I let's see here, hold the phone. If I want to reload that sample as a maybe I can go into the samples menu and find the actual sample here. It's recorded at 135. It's this sample here, and if we go, yeah, we can, in fact, we can. So I've selected the sample from where we recorded it on the, on the hard, on the hard, sorry about that, guys. Right, I've gone into where we've recorded the sample on the Digitakt. I found the sample, and I've selected it by just hitting yes, which puts a little check by that sample. Now if I press over to the right, it's giving me the opportunity to rename that sample. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and go to the end and let's name this C sharp minor. I need to have all of my samples labeled correctly, you know what I mean? So that my end users aren't struggling trying to get stuff in the right, pitch with with itself and stuff. And let's see. Okay, so we've gone ahead and that's now renamed. The Digitakt thinks that it's still in our project as sample number 99. Let's just go ahead and triple verify that, shall we? If we go into the source menu, it's not. It's currently here. It's not got the new name. So, see if I can figure this out. If we go to the menu and we go to, see, I'm sure I can find this if I just think hard enough. I think it's the import export menu, manage sounds, and view pool. Nope, close. Manage sounds. Those are just the inbuilt sounds, so I'm close, but not quite right. All right, I'll have to figure that one out later then. But for now, let's go ahead and move forward with the project. So what I can do is set the tempo here to 135 beats per minute because that's what we sampled from. I could bring the swing up maybe just a tiny little bit by default here because I like a little, swing and groove in my beats and whatnot. And let's go ahead and 2. So it's basically just a 1-bar pattern, and I've got our tempo a little bit off. Let's go back to 135. And if we go to the trigger page, we can set up the setting for this sample that whenever I, put the notes in, that it should play at maximum velocity. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then we'll go into the actual step recording mode here, and I'm going to put a trigger on the first downbeat. And I want this to hold for the full measure, which is 16 beats. So up here on the top, we're going to make the length of this 16 beats. All right. Cool, and let's go ahead and make this a 4-bar project at this time by hitting function and page, and then tapping page till we get to a 64 beat project, or pattern rather. We can hit function and page to get out of that menu, and now we're in a 4-bar project. Check out the effect of the filter on our new sound. Kind of see what that does to it. See what happens when we add a little resonance. Might be neat to assign a little bit of filter movement to this sound. So what we could do is on the LFO page, where we get 1 LFO to assign to every sound that we're loading onto the pads here, we could assign that LFO to the filter frequency, which is the cutoff of the filter, and we could have that filter move down a bit at a very slow speed. So we could change the beats per minute, the BPM division to 1, and we could take the speed on this right down to a much slower speed, I don't know, like 16 or something. And let's see if we can hear this affecting our sound. Cool. Put a little delay on this sound. And adjust our delay settings in the pattern here. Trying a little reverb on that sound. And adjusting the main reverb settings in the pattern here as well. I'm just going to give it a tiny little bit of reverb and delay so that it's got a little bit of, more interest to the sound. I think this groove here is kind of like maybe calling out for a really simple, like 4 on the floor kick drum type of sound. And we could load something like that onto pad 1 here. If we just start scrolling through the samples that are already in the project here, we can maybe pick something out. We've got claps and we've got all sorts of sound. We've got chords, there's a kick here. Kind of make sure that's the one I want. And we've got some claps. More kicks, kind of a dirty kick here, kind of like that actually. I don't think that's right for our project though. And let's go, how about this kick? I don't think that's quite right for our project either. Gonna keep scrolling through the sounds that I've already got in here. That one might be more appropriate for this project. Let's find out. I think it is. Let's go ahead and put it in on the 4 on the floor. But actually, like I showed just a moment ago, if we go to the trigger page and we set the velocity on this sound to 100, then it will, every time I put a note in, it will use the maximum velocity setting for us to keep getting, you know, the maximum amount of volume out of these sounds here. All right, now we're definitely starting to get a little bit louder here, and I think I'll need to adjust some levels. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay as we start to get the music quite a bit louder. Bring that down just a tiny bit there. I'm going to go over to the compressor page in the Digitakt. We get there by holding function and hitting the master page on the right here. We can see that by default, you know, the threshold of the compressor is set very extreme, and we would be really squashing what we've got so far. I want to take the threshold up to about, you know, 75 maybe-ish. And start adding in some of that compressor. This is just helping me glue these sounds together right from the beginning of the groove creation here. I'm going to go ahead and save at this time also. Then maybe just really quickly check the volume that I've got here with one of these other patterns. I think we're in line. All right. Checking the volume that I'm sending out to the stream again here. Right. I definitely think that we could, you know, add some sort of a hi-hat groove at this time, right? Let's see here. If we just start scrolling through the samples that are already in the bank here, we can probably find some hi-hats to use. And we've got tons of sounds in here that we could pick from. I'll show you guys some of these inbuilt sounds here. Like a noise loop, quick little arpeggio, cool little drum beat, cool little bass sample, little cool formant sound out of the virus, cool donk out of the virus, cool closed hat, hey, cool open hat, that might work. Let's put that in as though we like that, right? Cool, and let's adjust some things, like maybe the tuning on that. That's sounding pretty nice, actually. Let's add a little bit of reverb to this. And a little bit of delay as well to get some, you know, movement happening in those hats. Yeah, here we go. Fantastic. That's a great start. One of the things that I like to do is I really like to be able to run the audio of the project that I'm working with, you know, into Ableton so that I can get a visual representation on what we're working with. But I currently have the Eurorack plugged into the computer and not actually the stuff that we're working with. So now I just need to switch that over so that I'm taking here a headphone output from the main mixer, and we're running that into the input of Ableton here, so that I can actually get a visual representation of the frequencies in the audio that we're creating now. Let me show you what I mean by that. I just need to get there we go. Need to put this into the right setting, and then we can take a look at these visualizers. I've got the FabFilter Pro Q3 up by default. It's just a, you know, visualizer that I can use to see the frequency content that I'm putting together. And I've also got here now the Izotope Tonal Balance Control plugin. And as I leave these open on the screen as I'm working, it'll help me mix, especially when I'm, mixing on headphones, that we're not pushing like too much high frequency content that I might not be aware of, or too much, subs that I might not be hearing on the headphones. So let me go ahead and check what we're looking like visually here on the start of this mix. Oh, we're looking really good, actually. We've got our line completely within the boundaries of where it should be for the frequency spectrum. And there's a little bit of areas that, we might like to work on. We'll get a little more frequency content here, for example. All right. For this first one today, I'd like to keep this, a little bit simple as I start getting warmed up, per se. And I think what we'll do is just kind of, keep it simple, like I said, and maybe just add a clap at this time. If I just start scrolling, let's actually scroll all the way to the end of the samples in the bank, and then we'll scroll sort of backwards through those and see if we can't find a clap symbol to put in. It's an awesome drum loop that I added last night. Another melodic sound. Plenty of dub chords and things like that. Cool pad sounds. Awesome basses. More kicks. More drum beats and stuff. More drum beats. Big old fat kick drum. More kick drums. Awesome chords in here. Let's see here. Come on. We need the perfect clap. Let's find it. More kick drums. More hats, cool tape noise there, more chord stabs, more bass sounds, more high melodic sounds, yeah. Subs, little chops, shaker, some noise percussion, more like a dirty ride, some more kick stuff. All right. Come on, clap. And we don't just want a clap, we need the right clap. It's got to be the perfect clap. This is more of a hip-hop kind of a clap here. That's not quite what I'm looking for. It's more of a snare and a clap put together there. It's still not quite what I'm looking for. Here we have another clap. Yeah, not quite the clap I'm looking for. I think I have, a couple more claps in here as well. Ooh, that's a really clean one. That might be the one, you guys. Let's find out. Kind of like that. Let's just put that in and see what happens. A little overdrive on that clap to really cut through. And now maybe bringing the volume of our original sort of melodic sound here down in the mix a little bit. Try to get it a little more even with these drums. I'm going to check in with the chat real fast and make sure I'm not missing anything. Once the sample is edited, there will be parts of the transient that will be left behind. No, what happens, Sean, is after we do the trimming, that's when we save the sample. So it takes everything that we don't want, it throws that away, and it just saves the little tiny segment that we want. It doesn't mess up like your hard drive with that extra stuff. That's the beauty of the trim, is that it just takes it completely away. Hey, thanks, Ted. I appreciate that. Let's put a little bit of reverb on the clap at this time. One of the methods that I like to use, when I'm adding effects to sounds is I like to kind of max it out sometimes and really let my brain hear what the reverb is doing to the sound. Obviously I don't want that much reverb, but now I have a really good idea of what the reverb sounds like on that clap, and I can kind of tame it accordingly. Basically want to tuck that reverb back so it's not super aggressive, right? And then if we hear that clap now on its own, we hear that it still has quite, a bit of reverb on it. All right. Taking a look at the compressor settings again. I distorting anyone's phone yet? The level I'm sending out to the stream is pretty hot. I think I'm going to turn that down a tiny little bit. And maybe get it so you can hear my voice a tiny bit better as we're getting the music to be so much louder here. Hopefully you can all still hear my voice okay. If anyone has any ideas for what we could call this pattern, go ahead and drop those in the chat. That'd be really awesome. The Digitakt only gives us, kind of a limited space to put names, so we can't, call it something like The Boy That Time Forgot or something, spacey creative. We just have like a one-word kind of title, but we definitely need something. Hey, what's happening, Ned? Thanks for tuning in. Let me give you guys an example. For instance, if we go to the first bank of patterns that I started to create here, here's a pattern that I called Violetta. It's kind of a dub pattern. It seems like I'm working on this pattern here way too loud in comparison to some of these other patterns. So let me maybe wrap my brain around the volume of some of these other patterns. Go to bank B and maybe check out this pattern. And then back to the pattern we were working on, bank C, this one. Yeah, we are way, way loud. And there's an easy way to fix that. If we hit function and we hit the master button on the right, like we were going to go into the compressor page, you might notice that it says, actually, when you get to that menu, it even says, compressor, page 1 of 2. And if we hit function and that master button again, now we get into the mixer page, 2 of 2. And so what we could do would be to literally just turn every single track in here down by 5 evenly across the board in the mixer tab. This is a really easy way to just adjust the sort of global volume of your pattern and kind of keep your patterns, relatively close to the same volume if you can. Let's save at this time. All right, let's see what happens. See, that's too many words, Connor. Okay, let's go ahead and bring the filter down on this clap a little bit so it's not quite full of so many high frequencies. If we bring it down a lot, this is just a low pass filter, we can really, almost completely take it out of the, audible hearing range. But I find if we just filter off sort of the very top end sometimes, it can maybe give the other crispy elements of our drum loop a chance, to breathe in their own acoustic space in the mix, those high frequency hats and whatnot. Cool, I think our open hat is a little too loud. We're gonna start mixing that down. Bring that clap up again a little. Also just trying to bring back our main melodic element as well so that it's not fighting with the drums quite so much and that the drums are punching through a little better. Yeah, getting there. I think we could do a really, easy, thing here by just adding maybe like a dub chord that we've already got inside of the bank. One of the things that I'm trying to do with this bank is I'm trying to make a ton of patterns. I'm going to include 120 samples. The banks themselves can actually hold up to 128 samples. And that way there's still, 8 sample slots left for the end users who are using the bank to hopefully make their own music with. Like if they have a few specific sounds that they can't work without, you know what I mean? That still gives the end user a little bit of room to add a few more elements here. And what I'm trying to do is really just to make as many different kinds of genres and patterns with those 120 sounds as I can. So for instance, here today, we've just started by sampling just one new sound into the box, and then using, we're going to be using existing sounds to continue building this groove. So I've still got lots more room to add lots more samples to this bank as well, and I'm really focusing on that as I'm building it. Okay. We have a great name. Hey, thanks very much, Sky Tortoise Ferryman. Let's go with that. We're going to go to the import and export menu, which is a little bit unintuitive actually, but that's where the pattern rename hangs out. And we can just click rename. We can go function and clear, and we can put in the new name. Let's go with that. Invasion. See if I can squeeze in an exclamation point at the end of that. Can we? Yeah, we sure can. Awesome. Invasion. Hey, thanks very much for that, Brett. Cool. All right. Let's just let that finish saving there, and we're back into working. So yeah, I think the easiest thing that we could do would be to just add a chord stab. Everyone knows I love the dubs. I've got lots of, chord stabs inside of the bank already for us to pull from. Let's grab an empty pad here. How about this one at the end? We'll bring the volume up on that pad a little bit, and we'll just scroll through some samples here. And let's see here. I got a really awesome, tight, popping 808 snare in here. Let's see, but I've got some dub techno type of stabs in C minor in here, and that might be really easy to just grab and just tune up a semitone if it fits with what we've got going here. It may or may not. There's a pluck sound tuned to C. That's really useful. But here we have a nice dub chord that's already in C minor. So if I load this, and if I just +1 on the semitone, now it's going to be a C sharp minor, and it might go with the with the vibe that we're laying down here. And maybe if we tune it up a full octave, maybe. Let's find out. Ooh, I like that. Get creative with the stab, so that's not just the same stab that's being used like every single time I bring that stab into a project. Let's go to the source page, and if I hit this page twice, source, and then so let's say we're in like the LFO, right, and I hit source and then source again, so source page twice gets you into this view where you can actually see the waveform. And when you trigger the sample, you can see the playhead going through that waveform as well. And you can adjust things like the start point of the waveform or even like the end point of the waveform. Then you can move those around. You could make it a really thin, small, starting point if you wanted. And now it becomes just a really quick hit, right? We could maybe take the attack on that up by like just 1 so that it's a little bit smoother. Yeah, we could maybe save at this time, and we could maybe see what happens if we try to get that into the groove. Put a couple of extra hits in here as kind of like a turnaround, and what we could do would be to maybe like detune those hits a little bit. So we could go over to the tuning page, and when see I'm holding this specific note down. Whenever you hold just the one step down that you've put in on a lane, we can do any sort of changes that we want to the filter or the effects or the envelope or the tuning, and it's just going to stick to this one step alone and not affect the rest of our sounds that are on this track. So maybe we could take these last 2 hits and maybe bring them down by 2 semitones in pitch. Get that right down to -2, and let's see what that sounds like. That sounds pretty good. What let's do is let's make make it so these hits don't happen every single time that the pattern plays through its, 4-bar pattern. Maybe let's have these two little hits play at the second time, so it becomes more of like an 8-bar pattern feeling. If we just hold this down and go to the trigger page, I can go over here to the conditions, and I can, if I scroll left, I can get into the percentages of what percentage this trigger is likely to trigger. And I can get right down, like only maybe like, 1% chance that that note is ever going to trigger, right? But that's not what we want to do. We want to scroll to the right, and we want to get into these type of settings. We've got 1 out of 2. That means like this sound would play the first time it went through the pattern, and every 2 patterns it's going to play the first time. And the next one is 2 out of 2. So now it's going to play only the second time it plays through the whole pattern. And that's what we're looking for both of these. If we set them to 2 out of 2, it's only going to play these, every other time it goes through the pattern. Yeah, see, that's where you get limited, Sean. There's no way to do any kind of gated reverb or pumping reverb. There's no tools to accomplish anything like that inside of the Digitakt. So if we specifically wanted a kick with pumping reverb or like, a big techno kick, it would be best to create that sort of a sample outside of the Digitakt and then sample it in with that, rumble or that pump pre-baked into the sound. I have a lot of kick drums like that in the Dirty Tech Drums sample pack that I have for model samples. Those samples will also load into the Digitakt, but the patterns won't load. But I do have a lot of kick drums like that in that bank. I just don't have any of those in this bank right now. I'm not super making that hard techno in this particular bank, more just the chilled dubby kind of techno. Although I do suppose one way you could try to achieve something like this, maybe if we had a little bit less frequencies already in the mix, is you could potentially grab that kick drum, right? And you could go over to its LFO page. Over here, the modes of the LFO, you can actually change this into a trigger mode so that now the LFO just happens every time you trigger the sample. Okay, and you could change the destination here of where this LFO is going to. You could scroll down through the filter and the amplitude, but I believe somewhere in here, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there I thought that we could assign something to the effects in here. Maybe I'm mistaken now. No, there it is. Amplitude, reverb send, okay? So you could set the LFO to trigger only when you trigger the sample, and you could, I got that on amplitude. Hold all of a sudden. Where did that go? Amplitude reverb send. Okay, so amp reverb, and then you could, move this amount knob here, and you could start adjusting the speed of the pump and try your best to get that to actually, move the effects send of that reverb up every time the LFO hits. So you could potentially do it that way, although I don't think that's necessarily going to get you, the most awesome techno, kick, pump, rumble type of thing, but that might be like a workaround inside of the Digitakt. One of the reasons why I love this box so much, you guys, is because of the limitations within this box. As far as the tools that you would need for actually producing and mixing music outside of Ableton, you've pretty much got 0 of those tools in a box like this. You've got one filter per channel that can either be a high pass, a band pass, or a low pass filter. It can't be both. So if you want to filter down those high frequencies but also get rid of the lows, you're out of luck. It's the one or the other. You don't have any compression other than a master compressor that goes over all of the tracks in the whole project to squeeze those together. And we only have one LFO per channel. So you're not going to get super creative with the LFOs moving your sounds around as well. But in those limitations, it really gets you to start utilizing its parameter locking feature that I can't get enough of, which is basically, once we've opened up the steps that we're working with, we could pick a track, right, say the kick drum, and then we open up those steps. We can see what page we're on, you know, over here in the page menu. But here we can choose, you know, any step of this pattern. I can put a different kick drum on it if I want, and I could come over here to the, you know, effects page. I could put the reverb up on just this one kick. I could crank up the overdrive on this kick. I could pan the kick. I could make it be lower in volume. I could change, you know, the amplitude, the envelope on this kick drum. We could max out the delay. I could tweak the filter settings, right? We could come over here and we could bit crush it. See, I'm holding the sample, the note down rather, this entire time. So I'm only affecting just this one step with all of those changes that I've made. Those are the type of changes that will allow us to sort of do that cool automation and stuff like that. But, you know, it's only what the box will let us do, you know, which compared to something like working in Ableton is like super, super limited. And that sort of just, I find, really brings out my creativity in trying to come up with specifically things like maybe different ways to use the same sample, for example. Start mixing this a little better. That's too loud. Making some adjustments here on this sound so that the LFO we've assigned to it takes the frequency down a little bit further and darkens the sound up a little bit more, giving us a little bit more room in the frequency spectrum for the higher frequency content like this sound here. Currently, it's like the bass is our lead sound, and it's kind of overpowering our melodic sound. And what I want is I want the drums and the bass to be pretty even, and I want that melodic sound there to sort of float over the top of them. Now we're getting there. Alright, now that we've got some sort of a pattern started here and we've given it a name, thanks very much for that, Brett. Let's go ahead and do something completely different. Let's choose a different pattern, and rather than trying to create something from scratch, let's try to make the B part. Because like I said at the beginning, each of the patterns that I'm creating here, I'm creating an A part and a B part, so that the end user has even more inspiration in, you know, figuring out how they would like to use these sounds. Let's go over to Bank A. Let me just pick this last pattern in Bank A arbitrarily. It's called dub, and let's take a listen to what that sounds like. Maybe see if I can't create the A and the B variations here, so we're not just working on the exact same pattern for the whole session today. Alright, just taking a look at how much volume I'm sending out to the stream. I'm going to get a little louder here. How's the volume there at home, guys? Am I coming through too loud? Just let me know if we start coming through too loud, and I'll try to change that. I really like the way that this pattern sounds. Maybe what we could do would be to mute something. Yeah, and just sort of maybe mute that one as well. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Connor. I appreciate that. Thanks, Ned. All right. Yeah, cool. So what we'll do is create sort of like an A and a B variation here, where the A will sort of introduce the groove to the listener, and then the B will sort of add some more of these parts. Here I've muted tracks 5 and 6. Let's go ahead and copy this pattern. We're going to go pattern 15, copy. We're going to go pattern 16, paste, and I'll hold this. Cool, and now pattern 16. All right, we're going to go ahead and unmute those tracks that I muted. We're going to make sure we're on pattern 16 and make sure everything's copacetic here. Yeah, cool. And we're going to go back to 15, and we're going to get rid of those tracks from playing on this particular version of the pattern. Cool, we get rid of that one. And we can get rid of these as well. All right, fantastic. So now we have sort of a pattern. Let me save at this time as well. Sort of we have a pattern now that will sort of introduce the listener to what the idea is about, right? They're like, okay, cool, this is a dub groove, you know, but what can I do with it? What could I add to this? They're thinking, right? We'll just go to the next pattern. And 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, and then they get those other elements and start to hear how it would actually sound in a, you know, more of a track format. Hey, thanks very much, everyone. All right. Let's see if we have an empty pad that maybe we could add one more sound to this B part with, right? Yeah, there isn't anything on this pad here. So let's go ahead and see if we can't put something on this pad here for this B part. Maybe like a ride. I have like a interesting lo-fi ride sound in here that I sampled out of the Euro rack. And let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I believe it's this one here. We'll take that amplitude up. Yeah, cool. And this sounds pretty cheesy and pretty lo-fi, and that's why I like it. When we get it into the mix, I find that it actually seats pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and just put it in on eighth notes, you know, dun, 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 dun. But we want a little bit of, you know, variation as it plays. So it's not just hammering the listener, you know, the whole time with no, you know, no subtlety at all. So what we'll do is maybe have these hits that happen, these ride hits that happen on the same beat as the kick drum, maybe we'll have those be a little lower in velocity. And so I could hold that and I could bring the velocity down on those notes, or I could just hold the opposite notes and bring the velocity up on those notes. And that's what I'm going to do. So here we've got, you know, the velocity on the ride where the kick happens at 100, and then the velocity when the ride where the kick is not happening, rather, up to 127. So we've got a little bit more of a tin, 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 rather than a, you know, just solid pattern. We can copy this page. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. We can hold, I'm doing this all wrong, aren't I? I want to copy this whole page of triggers that we've just put in, including those variations in the velocity. So I'm going to hit page and copy. Then I'm going to tap page to go to the second page over here and hit page and paste. Tap to go to the third page and hit page and paste. Tap to go to the fourth page and hit page and paste. And now I've got that ride pattern that we programmed in on all 4 bars. We can start hearing it in the mix now. Way too loud. I like to use the ride cymbal just to kind of tuck that high frequency content like way back in the mix. And I find that especially with a groove like this where the listener is kind of getting into what the chord sample is doing, when you start bringing that ride in and every now and again it's just kind of like, ooh, yeah, that ear candy, you know what I mean? All right. So I want to just tuck that back if we can. It's also kind of fun sometimes to play with the tuning of the ride, you know, go down a little and maybe go up a little and see if it somehow, you know, helps it slot into your groove a little. Ooh. Here what I'm doing is I'm bringing the volume up on the actual sample itself so that the actual sample itself is playing at full volume. And then I bring the track volume down. Now, why I do that is you really want to get the maximum of volume out of the original sound source, and you want your mixer levels to be low as they can. That will help you with the noise floor in your mix. If I have the volume on the actual sample down very low, but the track level like maxed out, that's just going to bring more noise through the system that we don't need to be there. So you definitely want to remember to keep the volume on your samples up as loud as you can and just bring the volume on those tracks down to help that noise floor. We can also give this ride a little bit of its own space in the mix by just panning it a little bit. I'm going to pan it like 9 to the right. All right. We can also maybe do the same type of concept there by taking our chord stab. maybe panning that a little bit to the left. It looks like it already was. So we've got our ride sample panned a little to the right and our chord sample a little bit to the left. Now they're not quite as competing with each other for space in the, for acoustic space in the mix, rather. I'm going to save at this time. All right. Let's go back and forth between these patterns, and as the ride and other sounds come in or out, let's just make sure that that sounds good and smooth and as expected. I like your thinking, Ted. Ted says, could the LFO be useful with the ride in this case? And sometimes, absolutely, it can be. And what we could do is we could go to the LFO page, make sure we're on the pad that we want to affect, right? And we could take the destination of something like this. Sometimes I've liked to really like detune the ride in real time. Sometimes that gets a little over dramatic, but let's find out. What I'm going to do is I'm assigning the LFO to the pitch of this sample. Maybe let's make it, I don't know, like a very subtle amount, like negative 1.33, not even a full 2 semitones. Let's change the speed of this LFO to a very slow LFO by changing the BPM here to a 1, and then the speed maybe to like 13 or something. And let's kind of hear what this sounds like and see if we can actually hear this pitch change start to happen in the ride. I'm going to mute some of these other tracks here just so we can hear that ride now changing pitch, how it's kind of going up, and now it's going down. And we can affect how, how much of that, pitch sweep is happening with this control here, with the depth of the LFO. So I could have it just be an even 1 semitone. We could have it be even slower moving so that it's not quite as obvious to the listener what we're doing here, right? I also find, as I'm programming, I like to use, this is just individual preference here, but I really like to use numbers that help me just sort of geek out. So let's put this at like 11.11 and see what happens. Mathematical numbers is kind of maybe more what I'm trying to say there. I think that's sounding cool, maybe a little bit too dramatic though, so let's bring this down to say half of a semitone. So we're not even affecting the ride by a full semitone in pitch, but just waving it ever so slightly. An alternative would be to try to make this LFO happen at a really fast speed and see what that does to the pitch of the sound. So we could just start cranking this up, and you can hear how we're affecting that pitch, right, and getting it kind of wobbly. We can keep going up though, and even more. And now we're up into these crazy speeds, like, right, 1K and 2K. And look what I've done to that, ride. We've now turned it into something completely different using the LFO, right? You could even, have it as dirty as you would want it. This is the beauty of the Digitakt right here, you guys. Just getting in and trying things creatively. I'm not sure that we're looking for this kind of a ride with this groove, but you get my idea here, right? We could fuzz it up just a little bit, Start bringing some of the other tracks in and see how that works in the mix, I kind of actually like that almost. That's really unique and unexpected sounding, like not that traditional, ride sound. Here, we can go over to the filter page of the ride, and we can see that currently there's not any filtering happening actually. There's no filter. So we can see what happens if we filter that down. Not as much though. Maybe we put some envelope on this, but not as much though. Maybe we bring this up just a little. And basically what we've done now is created an entirely different vibe with that ride. I kind of like this. Bring in some more of these tracks back. That's all working really well together. I'm going to go over to the master compressor page and we're going to check that out. It looks like I haven't really set that for this groove. So that needs to be done. Let's see if we can do that now. I'm going to bring the threshold up here quite a bit so that the amount, if we look up in the upper right hand corner here, we see a little visualization inside of the Digitakt, which is the amount of gain reduction that we're getting with the compressor. Now, we don't want that to be, a huge amount of gain reduction and just squashing everything by like 20 decibels. So I bring the threshold way, way up, anywhere between about 70 and about 80 for a starting point. And I'm just looking, I don't know if you can see that on the stream there, probably not, but I'm just looking for it to really gently start affecting that amount of attenuation that the compressor is getting. We don't hear anything because the compressor mix is at 0. And as I start bringing that up, it just kind of starts compressing and gluing everything together. I usually like it right around 40 to 45-ish. I don't know if you guys can hear that. But what we've got here now is a lot more glued together sort of beat now that we've added that compressor. This is at a 78 and a 40. So I'm going to want to make sure that our other version of this pattern has those same settings. In fact, let me just grab a pen and write those down so that I can make sure I don't forget and waste everybody's time. Okay. Let's see here. So we've got a threshold setting of 78. And we've got the mix setting of 40. So now if I bring up the pattern that we started with, that groove, I can make those the same. And that will keep those patterns sounding the same as the end user scrolls between them. And the threshold was at 78. All right. So here is our pattern, our variation 1 of this pattern. And if we go into the variation 2, and 1, 2, 3, and ooh, now we bring in that sizzle ride. I'm really liking that. That's got a neat sound that none of the other patterns in this bank have. I really appreciate that suggestion, Ted. All right. Let's bring in our other sounds and try to mix them in. Yeah, I just want to make sure that bass is giving plenty of room for the other sounds, but that we can still hear it down there. I think that's working. Ooh, this has turned into a lot more of a sizzling lo-fi groove. I'm really digging this, yeah. Bring that down in the mix a little. Remove a little bit more low frequency content from that chord stab. Ooh, yeah. Now we can turn that chord stab up a little bit. Give it maximum amount of reverb. Yeah. So now we have, this is why I wanted to be able to create the A and a B part for every single pattern in the bank. Because now the end user has got a lot more inspiration to work with right off the jump in these patterns. And people can take these patterns, they can turn them into songs, copy it into a blank section, make a full track out of it. They can remix the patterns. They can not use the patterns at all, but just use them as inspiration or examples of what can be written with the samples inside of the bank as well. Okay, so what we've done today so far, looks like we've been going for about 80 minutes. We've created a very basic pattern here into Bank C. I believe it was this one here called Invasion. Thanks again for that name suggestion, Brett. This is something, again, this would just be like a one pattern idea. To make this into a groove, the end user would need to copy the pattern out and make several variations, etc. And let's see here. Let's go ahead and create another like A and a B part, or maybe we'll start another pattern from scratch actually. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go into bank. We're already in bank C. Cool. Let's pick an empty pattern. And this is what let's do. Let's get the chat involved, you guys. Let's do this. Let's we have a completely empty pattern here with no sounds in it. Why don't you guys suggest a number between plus 12 and negative 12? And what I'll do is I'll set the pitch of this sample slot to that number, and then we'll start scrolling through the samples. And maybe we'll find a way to use one of the existing samples in the bank in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended for. We'll get creative with starting a groove that way. So go ahead and drop a number into the chat, anything from, plus 12 to negative 12, anywhere in that range. And we'll see what we can come up with. Let's go ahead and clear out the sounds that are on these pads by default. So clearing these out. And this is not deleting the sounds from the bank or anything. It's just clearing the pads out. It's going to keep all of the samples in that session. I'm going to save at this time. And yeah. We've got 2 votes. We've got a +3 and a -6, and then we've got a 6. So let's go ahead and go. Let's take that 6. And now let's see. Should we go negative or +6? Let's go -6, shall we? I'm gonna take. Hey, thanks guys. I'm gonna take just this empty slot here, which has no samples on it. I'm going to turn the volume up on this slot so that we can hear it really well. And I'm going to take the tuning. Actually, I'll leave. Yeah, I'm going to take the tuning of this sample, and we're going to set it to -6. And then we're just going to start scrolling through some of these samples that I've already got in the bank. So anything that we're hearing now is being detuned half of an octave from its original, position, pitch rather. And this can be a really interesting thing to get like different unexpected results out of anything that has a rhythmic element to it, like this drum loop here. And just like that, I mean, that would be a pretty cool groove to start with, right? But that's too easy. We didn't really do any scrolling. It was just the first sample, right? So, sub bass. Probably best not to detune a sub bass. It's a chord stab. That sounds really nice, detuned actually, right there. Wow. So for an example, the original, this is one of the ways that I like to start grooves inside of a bank, that's full of its own sound, so that by default, you're hearing things, not the way that they were originally intended. So for instance, that original pitch of that sample sounds like this. Down here, whoops, at -6, it's got a completely different vibe. Much more chilled, But that's only the 3rd sample. Let me scroll quite a ways into the bank, right? Let's start with like sample 46. It's a clap being now played, half an octave lower. Oh my gosh, wait a minute. Hey, Audible Video, what's happening? Do you guys like this for a kick drum, or is that maybe a little too low? Sometimes it's hard to tell with headphones, but boy, that's kind of neat. I don't know. That original kick, whoops. See if we can't. Yeah, that original kick sounds like this, a little bit different probably. But boy, detuned, those 6 decibels gives it a completely different vibe. I'm just not 100% sure if I'm hearing it on headphones the way that, well, I don't know. Could we filter that down even? Yeah, maybe not. All right, let's go ahead and keep scrolling. That's not the one. That's not the one. It's a snare, a hat, shaker. Detuning hats and shakers is always cool. Interesting hearing that down-tuned. Boy, that that hat detune sounds great. Wow. It's a nice little kind of reggae dubstep. It sounds good detuned too. Oh, I like that too. So many good things here. There's a dark dub pad. It's even darker now that it's been detuned. Well, that's a nice one too. Really deep bass line now. Wow. Little percussion, more kick stuff. More percussion, more shakers. Ooh. That bass is huge. So is that one. Yeah, these basses detuned are getting a little larger than what I'm looking for. Some dirty tape noise, huh? Ooh. Oh my gosh, I really like that chord detuned. That's nice. Hold the phone. What is that? What key does it put that in? If we just taking a look here. It's either F sharp. It is. It's F sharp. Boy, I really like that though. I know I make a lot of dub on this channel, but I think we might be making some more right now, you guys. What let's do is let's get this into the right kind of acoustic space for a proper dub stab, shall we? If we go to function and reverb, we can adjust the global reverb settings, and I can turn that up by default to something really long, like a big reverb, right? Like 90, and I can bring the volume on the reverb up as well. We can run a high pass filter and kind of low pass filter off some of those frequencies as well, so that the reverb itself is a little cleaner sounding. Yeah, now we're starting to get there. I'm going to have this delay even longer. Let's go to 95, and let's put more of it on the sound. I'm going to bring this reverb all the way up to 100, and I'm going to max out the volume on it as well, so that we are dubbing as much as we could be dubbing. Very nice. And let's work on this delay a little bit as well. Let's turn it the ping pong on. Let's give it some stereo width and give it a nice long amount of feedback for dub, shall we? Let's also route a little bit of this delay into the reverb send so that gets a little bit more texture on the sound. I'm going to mess there with the filter frequencies so that we're filtering off some of the low content from going into the delay. And we'll go ahead and turn up the delay now on the stab. And suddenly we've got, you know, that big, huge wash of dub techno stuff, right? And let's see here. That is in the key, we decided, of F sharp. Yeah, cool. So let's see here. We could do this traditionally and try to get like a really low tempo going. Let's say let's start with something like, I don't know, 106. Maybe bring the swing up a tiny little bit by default. And cool. Let's see here. We want to bring in a sample onto pad 1, probably a kick drum. And I'm going to turn the volumes up there, and we'll start scrolling through samples here. Let's see what we've got. It's a nice dubby kick, which might be like just the authentic sounding, you know, thing that we need. Let's go ahead and put this in as a 4 on the floor kick drum. But let's make our pattern a 4-bar pattern first by going function and page, and then we'll just hit the page button a few times until we've got a 64 beat pattern. We can hit function and page again to get out of that menu. And let's see here. Now we just want to go to the trigger page and tell our kick drum that when I put the triggers in, I want those to be at 127 velocity, so max velocity on these kick drums, right? And we can just go ahead and put those in on all 4 pages. Start filtering this down a little tiny bit and get rid of a little tiny bit of the high frequency. I mean, just ever so slightly, just shaving off a tiny bit of the high frequency content of that kick drum for us. All right. Cool. That's over here. going to put the stab in, I think, on, rather than the traditional offbeat sort of vibe, I think we're just going to go ahead and put the chord stab in on the downbeat to start and see how that gets us going. See if we can get the delay to kind of ring out for a bit of time and create some texture over the, all we have is just a kick drum. Let's get on the, whoops. Let's get the attack up on this chord sound so it doesn't have so much of a transient at the beginning, and that it's more subtle. We could make it very subtle if we wanted, right? In fact, if we do this sort of a fade in here at the beginning with the attack, we can almost get like a sidechain pumping effect. If I put it up all the way, I'm kind of vibing this actually. We're going to adjust that reverb, I think. But what I want to do is I think I want to match the kick here and just sort of emulate what the kick is doing and see if we can't get this doing what I want here. It's not quite doing what I want. Bringing the delay and the reverb and the volume of this sound down so that I can start trying to figure out where I need to get it here. We've got a nice filter as well, so I could kind of chill that chord out, but then use the envelope of the filter if I can get this going rhythmically here. Bear with me. Yeah. No, getting there. Yeah, let's make the LFO affect this filter a little bit, shall we? Let's go into the LFO page here and let's bring that depth quite a bit down, and let's assign the LFO to the frequency of the chord there. Oh, wait a minute, hold on, now something unexpected is starting to happen. That's kind of cool. What if I were to, yeah, if I tell the LFO that it's going to trigger the beginning of the LFO every time it triggers that sample, we start to get a little bit more consistent rhythmic effect happening here. Maybe we want to go the other way with it. Let's see here. Yeah, listen to that rhythm. I'm adjusting how much of that sort of effect we're getting here by the depth of the LFO. We could crank it up and go crazy with it, right? Now it's sort of jumping, you know? That's kind of interesting. Not what we're looking for, but interesting. This is really not what I was expecting. Kind of vibing this, though. Seems like it's just a little bit rhythmically off still. So I'm trying to kind of find a sweet spot, if there is one. Ooh, getting closer now. I may have just hit it. I'm gonna... Okay, let me kind of clear my brain, you know, maybe listen to another pattern for a second. Hey, we're dubbing. Okay, cool. And then maybe go back to that one. Okay, I've tamed the amount of movement we're getting here. change the beats per minute, you know, speed of the LFO down to 4 instead of 16. We're starting to get even closer, I think, maybe to what I'm kind of liking that. What happens if we start trying to sort of find the, you know, middle ground between like chilled, yeah, and where I want that chord to sit in the mix. Now I want to bring that reverb back. That's too much reverb. Let's save at this point, and let's go ahead and add some counterpoint rhythm at this time, like maybe a backbeat hi-hat or something, right? If I just choose a pad, we can bring the volume up on that pad and start scrolling through some of these sounds. That'll work for now. A little bit of reverb on that sound. And like I said, I like to kind of give it way too much reverb at the beginning so that I can really hear what that reverb is doing to the sound. And then I'll sort of tame it. It sounds really sweet on that sound, but we don't want that much reverb, so I'm going to bring this down in the mix quite a bit, right? Just taming the reverb on our hat now. But I definitely want to create a texture with it, so I don't want to take all the reverb away. Let's start bringing up some delay on this hat now and really bring in some rhythmic element here. Hear that delay on the hat now start to really come through. That's nice. I think we need to tame that chord a little bit though and bring it back further in the mix. Yeah, let's go over to the compressor page by hitting Function and LFO. So we can see that it's trying to squeeze the heck out of our groove so far, but we don't want that. So we want to adjust the threshold way up. Again, I like to set mine anywhere from about 70 to about 80 as kind of like a starting point. But really, more important than the numbers is that we're seeing how much attenuation that compressor is giving our mix. And we don't want it just, you know, squashing our mix down to a tiny little, you know, squashed mix. We just want it gluing everything together as like a master compressor. So I'm going to set it on 78 here, and we're getting just a little bit of compression happening. And I'll start dialing in the amount of compression now. I typically like this anywhere from about 40 to 50. 50 starts gluing us, 40 started gluing us together there. 43 is really gluing the sounds together. I'm vibing that, so we're going to go Function and Save. We're going to save everything at this time. Are we still live? The chat is being pretty dead. Are you guys still there? Can you still hear me? Alright. What let's do is let's jazz up this hi-hat part, and by adding some, you know, some more sounds to it, some more rhythm, so it's not just a backbeat hat. If I select the track I want to work with, we select maybe page 1 of that, put in another trigger. I can go to this new trigger and pick a different sound to happen on this step. So if I'm still holding that step, I can just start scrolling through all of these sounds in the pack here. Somewhere I've got some shakers in here. Maybe we'll choose this one. It's called Shake Up. Cool. What we can do is we can filter down that shaker a little bit. We can bring the velocity of this hit quite a bit down, maybe like 65. Too much of the filter, it sounds like. Yeah, there we go. We're still hearing that. Let's take the pitch of this particular shaker up by 5 semitones to see how that sounds. Ooh, nice. Let's copy it over here. Start actually getting that in the mix. So I can hear it here. 3 and... Yeah, I like that. Let's copy that. Whoops. Let's copy and paste that into those other ones as well. Let's get a little bit more swing on the groove. These are very subtle in the mix. We're going to copy and paste and paste and paste and paste. Now we're going to get a little bit more creative, and we're going to pan the first shaker to the left by 5, the second shaker to the right by 5. We're going to go left by 5 and right by 5 again, and repeat that for the bottom row. Left by 5, right by 5. This is just getting us a little bit more interest in the acoustic space, you know, widening the sound just a little bit. Very subtle amounts, you know. These will add up to a well-polished groove as you keep layering these little subtle polishes in. Now we can copy this page of our groove, which now has those hi-hats on the upbeat and also the shaker part. And we can go copy that page, go over to the next page, and paste in that page of triggers. Go to the last page and paste those in rather. So now we've got the shaker and the hi-hat happening throughout our whole pattern. Just a little bit more interest in the groove, you know. Cool. Now we are writing in the key of B minor here. A quick sample on the computer side of things here. Let's see if I can adjust that light so it's not quite so bright there. Yeah, it's a little better. All right, let's see about sampling another sound into the Digitakt at this time. I've got sound banks that I've made for the Dune synthesizer, virtual synthesizer, and also for the SERUM virtual synthesizer. Does anyone in the chat have a preference as to which one of those we try to work with? We could either load the SERUM virtual synthesizer or the Dune virtual synthesizer from Synapse Audio. And we could maybe try to sample one of my presets out of those into the groove here. All right. We've got a vote for SERUM. Thanks, Ted. Cool. Let's do that. We're going to go ahead and load SERUM into Ableton at this time. I'm going to go to Plugins, and I'm going to scroll down here to X for Records, and we're going to grab SERUM. I'm just going to put that on a new track. Wait a second for Ableton to catch up with us here. Cool. And put that SERUM in on a new track. All right. We're just going to make sure that I've got the tempo in Ableton set to the tempo of our project, which is 106 beats per minute at this time. And we're going to bring the volume down on SERUM so it's not blowing anybody's ears out, hopefully. I'm also going to bring up an EQ, just in case we want to shape that sound. And let's load one of my banks. Okay, I'm going to load my SERUM ammo bank here, and we're just going to maybe see if we can't find something maybe unexpected to go over something like this. Let's just start randomly scrolling through some of these sounds, and we'll see what happens here. Is it, what am I on or not on? It's on that one. It needs to be on this one. There we go. Okay. I think that's going to be too loud still. And we're in the key of B today. Whoops. I know we're not looking for a dubstep dub, but we're just going to be scrolling through some presets and see if anything kind of, you know, inspires us. Hold the phone. Ooh, I like those hits after. I think we're going to sample that in, you guys. I think I'm just going to put a little bit of EQ on that. Yeah. Change some of those high frequencies a little bit, so it's not quite so. Just doing a little bit of EQ work here inside of Ableton as fast as I can here, so I don't bore you guys too much. But I really want to get, you know, the frequencies tamed. Yeah, I think what I want is a yeah, that's really nice. I think we're gonna sample this and then just trim out the part. Just getting my EQ on. Okay, cool deal. So if I go into the sample page here of the Digitakt, okay, and we're gonna need a little more level coming into the Digitakt. What I want is I want that part out of here. So we're gonna sample the whole thing, I think, and then just trim that out. We're gonna go ahead and hit yes to start it sampling. All right, and then hit yes again to stop it. And there's what I want, that you can see it really clearly there. We're going to go ahead and zoom right in to where that is starting here. Absolutely. Uh-oh, is there a click at the end? There is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go function and no, so we can get rid of that. And what let's do is I'm just going to really quickly put in an actual part here inside of a MIDI pattern in Ableton that will hold down that note just exactly the length that we need it to, so we can get rid of that little click at the end. All right, let's find out exactly how long we need to hold this note down for. There's still that little pop at the end. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of that pop. We either want to go a click longer or a click shorter. Let's try longer first. Nope, we want to go shorter. Let's go with tiny little click shorter. Come here. Let's try that. Oh, come on. There we go, perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and resample that into the Digitakt. We're going to hit yes, and I'm going to play that from Ableton now. I'll hit yes to stop here, and again, we can see exactly what we're after, those little chops here at the end. So if I kind of zoom in, we can get right in there. Exactly. Now I can trim off a little bit of the air from the end of this sample. We can make sure there's not going to be any clicks. Yeah, cool. And let's go ahead and save and label this sample at this time. We are working in the key of C sharp minor. Thanks, Connor. And we're going to go function and clear, and we're going to label this accordingly. We're going to go C sharp minor, and we're going to put a dash here, and our tempo is 106 BPM. If I have a rhythmic chop or fragment, I often like to get the rhythm, the tempo rather, baked into the name of the sample, so it's easier for people to use. But I also think that one of the really neat things about being creative with the Digitakt here, like we did earlier, is using the samples and the loops in ways they weren't intended to do. So maybe somebody would get in and just grab one little tiny chunk of this loop, for instance, and then use that to write a new melodic pattern. It's all possible inside of the Digitakt. Let's just call this this is a SERUM chop, so let's call this SERUM. Where's that U? Okay, cool. SERUM chop. Fantastic. And let's see here. I can't remember where we've assigned sounds or not. I don't think we've assigned anything to sample 4, so let's put it there. And let's go function and no to just clear that out again. So to readdress something we spoke of earlier, what I did was just trim out that sample and then saved the part that we kept. It doesn't keep any of the other little extra bits inside of the memory. All right. Now we've got that sample in the mix here. And what we can do is, if we want the pad to kind of only hold as I hold it and not extend when I let my finger off the pad, I'd like to set the decay time to about 4 for that. Maybe a little bit longer this time. We'll try 8. And let's see. 1, 2, 3. Okay. a few different ways that we could put this in. Let's bring the volume on that sound up. We could put it in on the downbeat and go really syncopated with the beat, or we could put it on the offbeat and kind of try to get interesting with the rhythm. Here's what it sounds like if we put it in on the downbeat. 2, 3, and... Alright, or we could also put it in where it's not on the downbeat. So maybe like 1, 2, 3, and 1. Yeah, let's put it in on the off, I think. Here we go, and 1, 3, 4, 2. Let me just kind of feel the rhythm here. 2, 3, and 4, 2. Here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Bum, bum, dun, dun, dun. No, this isn't working what I want. Let's see if we can fix that. Dun, dun, dun. Ooh. Okay, hold on. 3, and... Let me give that rhythm back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, and... Oh, that's it. Alright, now I can start actually getting that to seat a little bit more in the mix like we would like it to by changing the lengths of these notes to be a little bit more even. So for instance here, this the first step that I have put in, I'm going to want it to hold for these 3 full steps before the next note comes in. So if we go to the trigger page, I can just set the length of this trigger to 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to hold that really evenly that whole time. Yeah, and then here we just need to kind of figure out where I want the end of this one to be. I think it might just be 1/16th note. Nope. Is it 3 again? Let's find out. It is. Da-da. Okay, so that should be maybe 2. Yep, exactly, and that should be 3, and that should be 2. What we're adjusting here is just how long these, notes are holding out every time we trigger the note. And we're just trying to make it really even sounding. I want it to be a little bit, I don't know what the word is, like, not exactly on the beat, but just that tiny little bit off the beat. Exactly 3 as well. Maybe what I'm looking for is like dancing around the beat is what I'm trying to say, rather than competing with that kick drum, for example. Here we go, we're getting there now. That's definitely a much different, use of that preset than it was potentially originally, intended for. You know what I mean? That's for like, dubstep, kind of a groove. And here we've taken that sound and really got it into a dub techno groove. I'm vibing this. Cool. Let's bring it down in the mix. And let's add some reverb and delay to that new sound. See how much we can get away with. Quite a bit, it looks like. Sounds like, rather. Put some delay on there as well. Then we can start adjusting the filter and really kind of seat that sound in the mix maybe. See what happens when we go low with it. Sort of just disappears. Let's go ahead and, I know I'm really kind of a broken record with just doing the filter and the LFO, but I think it just sounds really, really good. And let's go ahead and go over to the LFO page here. Let's assign the LFO to the sample, to the frequency cutoff of the filter on this sample. And let's have it move that cutoff, quite a bit down. Let's have it do this very, very, very slowly. I'm going to move the BPM down to 1, and I'm going to move this speed to like 10 and change, right? I've got the depth of this down to like 20. And that's going to move our filter, our low-pass filter, all the way down here, and then kind of roll it back up again ever so slowly. That's what we're looking to start hearing now. I want to take a quick second and address a question in the chat here from Sean asking if the tonal balance 2 comes with neutron 3 or ozone 9. I'm not exactly sure which of the Izotope bundles that I got that in, but some sort of creative bundle or total effects bundle or something to that effect. It definitely came with a whole bunch of the other stuff as well. I've also got that ozone 9 and the neutron 3. I haven't really gotten a lot of use out of the neutron because I'm doing so much more producing with hardware than I am in the box these days. But I definitely find the tonal balance 2 plugin from Izotope to be really, really invaluable tool for helping me keep the the sonic frequencies of my tracks in line and where they should be per se. Absolutely. Okay, I think we've got our new sound a little bit too loud in the mix, so I'm going to try to bring that down a little. And we're sort of listening now to what the filter is doing on that new sound, and if it's taking it too far, or whether it's taking it, just far enough. Or how we like the speed of that movement on the filter as well. It's pretty slow, and that's what I want. It's taking the down a little bit further than I want, so I'm adjusting the depth of the LFO to the filter. I also think that when it does come up out of that low-pass filter, that it's a little bit too bright. So to fix that, I set the default state of the filter to not, fully open, and that helps us keep it a little bit darker in general, even when the LFO is opening up that filter. It's also gonna, when I move that cutoff down, it also means that the LFO depth now takes the filter a little bit lower as well. So we just kind of listen and we just sort of adjust these until the movement on the filter of that, new sort of RP sound is doing what we want it to do. Go ahead and save at this time. Yeah, I kind of like how it's almost fading out completely. My visualizers up again here. We're actually looking pretty darn good on this groove so far. Let's see if I can show you guys what I mean here. I'm gonna try to get a little bit closer with the phone. Whoop. So we're doing pretty good. This is like, our bass frequency range. We're looking pretty good here up through the mids. Got a little bit of a frequency dip here between about 1,000 and about 6,000 hertz. But we're looking really good in the high frequencies. We don't have so much that we're, gonna fatigue the listener's ears or anything. And that's really, really important, guys. And one of the reasons why I'm always doing this stuff, obviously I mentioned in the beginning that, I'm making a commercial bank here, and I certainly want the customers of this product to, be able to enjoy these grooves to the, maximum potential that I can. But I find that when you're really sculpting with the box like this, often because we don't have EQ in here, all we have is either a low pass filter or a high pass filter per channel, that when I'm creating is if I watch the frequencies and see where we need to fill in the spectrum as we're creating, it can kind of help decide like what type of content might help to, you know, fill in those frequencies. Or for instance, if I have a hi-hat that's banging away in the background and giving the listeners, you know, ear fatigue because the high frequency content is too much, you know, we don't want something like that. We need to keep everything really, really in line so that it sounds as good as possible across as many different speaker systems as possible as well. Let me just check in with the chat here. It's a great deal at Sweetwater for Izotope plugins. Ooh, sweet. All right. Frequency separation, and you haven't added any main lead. Yeah, exactly, right? So we've got room in the frequency spectrum here that we could add like a higher frequency lead type of sound. That's exactly what we should try to do, Sean. I like that. Let's see what we can come up with here. All right. Thanks, Sean. Also, we're going to need a name for this particular pattern. So if anybody can come up with a, you know, short one-word name that might fit the style or the vibe of this pattern. Yeah, I really like how that lead sort of fades out now, that arpeggio sound that we sampled in. And in fact, I think I want to make it move even slower so that it's going to fade out slower and fade back in slower. Remember what I said about doing like fun numbers that kind of make sense to a synth geek or whatever? We're going to put the speed on this like to 9.99. You know what I'm saying? Cool deal. I think that'll be nice and slow. And really sort of bring that, yeah, really sort of bring that out of the vibe and give the room in the mix for the chord to take over for a second. And then it kind of comes back in and reminds the listener, oh yeah, right, there was that other part here. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to bring this down in the mix a little bit more still, so that it doesn't conflict as much with our chord stab. And in fact, let's do one more thing to sort of separate those sonically, the chord stab and this sort of low arpeggio sound. Here's our chord stab on track 8, and I'm going to pan that, let's say 6 to the right. I'm going to take our arpeggio and pan that 6 to the left. This is really subtle. We could go all the way to 64. So this is like not panning it hard left and hard right. All we're doing is just kind of taking those frequencies from existing right in the center and just sort of doing this with them so they have a little bit of room to breathe in the mix. Let's go ahead and save at this time. Okay. Let's check out how our LFO is looking over here. Excuse me, how our compressor, rather, is looking over here. It's looking really good. Just shaving like the most subtle of the highest frequencies off of our open hi-hat there, or hi-hat, not really open, but all right, cool deal. It's looking really good and sounding good. We need some sort of high frequency content though, for sure. So let's pick a track that doesn't have anything on it. Let's bring up a melodic sound that we can use. I think I know exactly what we can use here. Or maybe that one, like high flux. Yeah, but we're in the key of, was it B? Yeah. It's not that one, I don't think. Whoops. So let's keep scrolling down. Pretty heavy on the lows, but maybe we can get away with some more lows. I really like the way that was sounding. Let's start from the 1, 2, 3. What would a bass do if I wasn't really planning on that? So now I've got to think a little bit about what I would have a bass do in this type of groove. Maybe it wouldn't hold out so long. Maybe it would be a more staccato bass. put this in and then tame it. We'll bring it way back in the mix. 4, 2, 3, and... Start by bringing the volume back a little and taking the filter frequency down on this and just kind of tucking it back into the mix, because we've already got a really large kick drum happening and we don't want to push too much low frequency content. I'm going to bring that down even more. Awesome. We're going to save. Now I'm going to bring that arpeggio part up a couple of decibels, just a tiny little bit, so that it sits over that bass. Yeah, okay, one more click then. So listen to it as it comes back in. Ozone 9 is really awesome, Sean, as well, especially if you're working with like hardware gear and stuff. Like if you're, you know, recording stuff and doing the best mix you can and getting everything polished as well as you can and recording that to a 2-track master and then loading that, you know, just a stereo file left and right. That's what I mean by 2-track. And then if you load that, you know, master stereo file from, you know, your mix up into Ozone, you can often use their like mixing assistant tools to kind of help you get even, you know, a more mastered type of sound to present. Ozone 9, definitely a good one to mess with if you're, especially, I can't stress that enough, especially if you're doing anything DAW-less. Did I save? Let's save. Let's see here. I think maybe we could add like a ride to this pattern as well, maybe, so that as our arpeggio type of sound is sort of like fading in and out, that the ride sort of keeps the rhythm more even sounding for our listener. Let's take a listen here. So what do I have here? I got that open hat. Nothing here yet. Nothing here yet. Yeah, so let's see here. If I wanted to put a ride here, what are our options for that in the bank already? I know we've got that lo-fi ride that I used a few patterns ago, but I believe we have more than just that one ride. Let me see if I can find out. We could definitely get that ride in here, but let's see if there's another one. That's not a ride sounding, I know, but it sounds pretty cool, right? Let's put that in there. Two, okay, hold on. 1, live recording. 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Bring that back in the mix and make it shorter. And let's pan that and give it its own space in the mix. I think that's subtle. And give it some reverb and delay as well. In fact, let's assign the LFO on that sound to, you know, move it back and forth across the stereo spectrum here. We'll assign the LFO to panning. Change the BPM to a really slow BPM. So we're just going to slowly move that between our speakers a little bit. Cool. Just a little subtle textured sound in the background there. We're going to bring that down even more in the mix. Yeah, I think that still leaves us some room for a ride cymbal if we can find one that fits here. Let's start scrolling again. That lo-fi ride might be the best choice here. when you've only got 120 sample slots to work with, I don't want to necessarily have like 5 ride cymbals, you know, cluttering up the bank. So sometimes it's going to be a little bit limited on what, you know, the actual sounds are going to be to pick from. Yeah, we're just going to go back with that lo-fi ride then. No worries. I'm going to bring that way down in the mix. And we're going to do what we always do. I really like just to put an 8th note ride. Bring this way down in the mix. We're going to get the velocity on these upbeats a little bit higher. Bring these to 120. Just on the upbeats here. And then, all right, we can copy this whole page of triggers and paste that in to the other pages. So we've got a 4-bar ride pattern here. Maybe mess with the tuning of this ride. Ooh. Cool. We can maybe pan our hi-hat track a little bit to the left. Maybe we can pan our ride track a little bit to the right. So again, we've got a little bit more stereo separation in this mix here. This is cool. Bring that ride down in the mix. And let's filter out any low frequencies that may be just hiding out there. So it's really just the super, super high frequencies in that ride only coming through here. Yeah. Hey, what's happening, Martin? Thanks for tuning in. Let's see here. Do we have an extra track still? We do. We have an extra track right here, which we could bring in like a, you know, some sort of a snare drum, whoops, or a clap or something like that. So let's see what we can come up with. One of the neat things I like to do is to take the actual little drum loops in here and then trim out just like one sound out of there. So for instance, that second sound is sort of similar to a clap. If I bring the start point of that sample in so that it starts on that clap, and I bring the end point of this sample, now we've literally just trimmed out a clap sound out of that drum loop, and we're using that drum loop in a little bit of a different, you know, way than it was intended to be used. And you can get into any of the drum loops in this pack and just trim out an individual sound, you know, to get an extra hi-hat or an extra, you know, snare drum or an extra kick drum or whatnot. Cool. Let's just put this in on the snare part here, shall we? Let's give this some reverb. Okay, we've got that pad happening with our kick drum, which is this one here. I think we're going to give this some less reverb and some less volume in the mix as well. So we're just kind of tucking that way, way back. Let's save at this time. All right. Yeah, now we're getting there. That sort of pumping pad is conflicting a little bit less. That clap is still too loud. Filter down a little bit of that clap. Make this like dark dub, you know? I think that could come down a little bit as well. Yeah, you don't get to do any layering on these pads, Barton. It is one sound per pad. But what you can do is you can, like, say, for instance, this is our kick drum here. Excuse me while I cough for a second there. On our kick drum, it's just playing these quarter notes, just boom, 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 just really slow. And in between those triggers, we've got, available notes here that don't have a sound on those notes. The interesting thing about the Digitakt is on any of its 8 tracks, on any of the steps, you could put a different sound. So for instance, if we wanted to put a different sound here on our kick drum track that's not a kick drum, we can do that. We just can't put it on the exact same note happening at the exact same time because these are 8 mono tracks. So anytime we trigger a new sample, it is going to cut off any sample that may be happening previously. But what this gives you the ability to do, for instance, if you have a short kick drum that's not really necessarily needing to ring out over the rest of all of these notes, you could use these and then go into the menu here, the sample menu, and you could assign whatever samples in the bank you want to these other steps, right? You could have a kick and then shakers that fill in the other notes, for example. So you could have definitely more than one sound on a track, but not necessarily on a pad to where when you press the pad that it's going to hit 2 samples. But I do want to address a question in the chat. Where was that? Well, it seems gone now, and I'm not sure who asked it, but a little while ago, somebody was asking about the comparison between a box like this and something like the MPC Live. And what you've got is this is one of the most simple boxes on the market, to be honest. This is a very simple and sort of glorified drum machine, in my opinion, sampler and drum machine. That it really excels when you're using it for like drums and stuff like that. It starts to show its limitations the more we try to build, full and complete music in a box like this. It certainly is doable, and sometimes, that sort of challenge itself is fun, to work within that type of a challenge. But something like the MPC Live specifically isn't going to have a lot of the limitations of a box like the Digitakt. For instance, the very first thing that's different between these two boxes is in the Digitakt you can only load mono samples. Anything we load into it or record into it gets summed to mono. And whereas, the MPC Live can certainly work with full quality, 24-bit stereo sounds. That's another limitation to the Digitakt is this is a 16-bit box. It samples in 16-bit 48 kilohertz mono sounds. So I mean the sounds are very nice and clean and crisp, but you really can't compare the type of production that you can do with a box like the MPC Live to something like this, because this is just so much more limited. With the MPC Live or with the AKAI Force or the MPC 1 or the MPC 2 or the MPC X, you can load up to four different samples onto every single pad, for instance. So something like that, really allows you to do a lot more like robust custom type of sound design. We can also load up to 4 different built-in plugins to every single pad as well. So you can have 4 samples on a pad and 4 different EQs on a pad, for example, where we don't even have one EQ inside of the Digitakt. All we have is a low pass and a high pass filter per track. Whereas, again, because we could load 4 effects on the MPC, you could have a low pass filter, you could have a high pass filter, you could have compression, you could have a different, bit crushing thing on every single pad. So you can really get robust and deep in mixing and producing outside of the box with something like the MPC Live, the MPC 1, the MPC 2, the Force, the MPC X. Whereas something like the Digitakt, you're really working within its very limited set of limitations. And that's one of the things that I like about it as well, is that you don't necessarily have to think about all that other stuff when you're producing. You just kind of, go and do what the box will allow you to do and try to get as creative as you can with its limited set of tools. All right. Yeah, 4 plugins per pad. So you could have up to 4 sounds per pad and then 4 plugins on that pad. And then you can still route that to the effects sends inside of the box, which could have 4 different effects on the effects sends. And you've got like, what is it, 4 or 8 different sends, and you've got sub mixes as well. I mean, producing and mixing with like all those tools, the AKAI boxes can't be beat. For just sitting down and having some fun with stuff, I really think that the Digitakt can't be beat. It's such an immediate box to use for that. But you're certainly not working with the same type of professional tool set that you've got in those MPCs. Just absolutely deep inside of those boxes. Okay, let's see here. Let me just save one more time because I don't know when the last time I've saved is. And I don't think there's a lot of room to add more things to this groove, particularly. I'm definitely going to want to go through and sort of fine-tune the mixing on this a little bit more. It's not quite there. It's really close, though. But what we'll do, I think, is give our ears a break from this pattern. Let's take a look here. We've been streaming for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. I would like to maybe make another variation of one of the patterns that's already in the box. Let's see here. If we go to Bank B and maybe arbitrarily pick this pattern here. What is this called? Scrubber. Let's see what this sounds like. It's probably going to get loud, guys, because the tempo is fast. Maybe this one. Cool. Let's wrap our head around this one for a little bit, shall we? I'm going to turn my headphones down just a little bit and check in with the volume that I'm sending out to you guys. I think it maybe be a tiny bit louder. Think that looks okay? I think it really just comes down to what you want to do at the end of the day. In my honest opinion, if your goal is to write, finished, completed tracks with one box, you want to go with an AKAI. You've got no business, trying to buy a Digitakt for the purpose of like, I'm going to write full completed tracks that are going to go on Beatport. And I mean, it's a glorified drum machine. It's a lot of fun. It is my desert island box. This is, out of any box I've gotten here, out of the Euro rack, out of anything in here, this is my favorite thing to just sit down and play with because it's just so easy to use and sketch out fun ideas and do things with, samples that maybe weren't intended to be done with those samples. But I certainly would not really, sit down and attempt to like produce, an album with this box, for instance. Now, I do release music under the moniker Prism Prime, and the last official release of mine is called The Black Box Sessions, and it is 3 tracks that were written with nothing but the Digitakt. No DAW, no computer, none of that stuff, just the Digitakt. It can be done. And it was a huge challenge, but at the end of the day, and I'll be 100% honest with you guys here, at the end of the day, those songs don't stand up meat-wise and sonically to what I can produce inside of Ableton, where I'm using, full stereo samples on every single track, no mono samples, and I'm using all of the tools and production, pieces that are available to me in a producing environment like that. This is a glorified drum machine. It's the best glorified drum machine I know, and I love working with it. But if your goal with music is to buy and invest in one thing that you can just have for years and produce and mix and learn how to use compressors and EQs and flangers and phasers and maximizers and bit crushers and all the kind of tools that you would find in a DAW, then you need an AKAI box or you need a DAW because those tools are not in the Digitakt. It's a lot of fun to work with, though, as you've seen today. So this groove is called Neptune. It's got quite of a different vibe than that last groove we were putting together. Let's see where the tracks are here. There's this one. What if we were to mute some of these? Because I want to create an A and a B part to this pattern. Like an A part that sort of introduces the listener to like what the pattern is about. And then, you know, a B part where we get more robust and explore more what you can do with the pattern. Yeah, that's really nice. So if we just simply mute some of the elements here, that's sounding a lot more like an A part, like a start to a thing. Let's go ahead and copy this into an empty pattern now. So each of the patterns in this bank will have two variations. So for instance, there'll be an A and a B, and then another pattern, A and a B, and then another pattern, A and a B. You get my drift? So we're going to be making the variation here on just the empty space next to it. I'm going to go pattern 11, copy, and I'm going to paste that into the empty pattern 12 here. All right. And let's see, pattern 12, we're going to unmute all of those elements. Pattern 11, which is the beginning pattern, we're going to take out these elements. What was it, 4, 5, and 6? Yeah, so what we're going to do is just get rid of any of these notes here. There's an easier way to do this, you know, but I like to do it that way sometimes. It's just really simple. You can see what you're doing. The other way would be to select the track that you want to delete the actual notes from, go into the record mode, and once the record mode is turned on, you can now go like, what are we on? What's this? Track 6. So we could go into this mode and then be like track 6 clear. Now that clears the sound. I didn't quite do that right still. It's maybe just track and clear. No, that just clears the sound. Anyway, there's a way to delete these dots without having to go in to do them manually. But sometimes I forget the details when we're live on a stream, and it looks like this is one of those times. Hey, sure thing, Ted. If anybody has any questions at all, whether they be, you know, Digitakt related, AKAI related, producing in a DAW related, producing on the iPad related, just feel free to drop those in the chat. I want to be super available for answering questions on these weekly live streams. So if you've got any questions at all, please feel free to just drop those in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer those. All right. So let's see. Pattern 1. Yeah, I think we could bring that chord staff up a little bit when there's not so much to compete with it as well. Yeah, that's better. I'll tell you what, the fine tuning of the levels on these patterns, you know, is something that I spend quite a bit of time. And then as I make a pattern, maybe I'll hear it back the next day and my ears will be a little bit, you know, in a different headspace, and I'll adjust those, you know, hi-hats a little bit. Maybe the next day I'll be hearing the patterns again and, oh, that bass is a little too loud, you know. So I find that taking, you know, a lot of time when I'm putting these banks together really helps to, you know, kind of polish everything at the end after the patterns, you know, and the sounds are, you know, starting to really, you know, be inside of the box. Let's see, I've got, for instance, there's an empty pattern here. I've got, if we go to the source page, I've got like almost 100 samples in here already. I'm going to go up to 120, so I leave 8 slots for the end user to be able to load their samples. But yeah, I'm already up to 100 samples in here. So I've got 20 slots that I can continue loading other sounds in. I'm still going to make quite a few more patterns. I think we're up to like 20 some odd patterns in here currently, but each of those is going to have an A and a B part. Cool. Here's the A part. See, our hi-hats could come up a little bit as well. Just ever so subtle. Yeah, that's nice. And then let's change to part 2. 2, 3, and now we introduce that sort of lead sound. Which pad is that lead on? This one here? Where is that? That one. I want to bring that up the tiniest bit again as well. Yeah. Now we should be able to scroll back to the beginning and have it still sound groovy. Yeah. In fact, maybe we don't need that second hit of this note on the intro pattern per se. Make it a little more subtle. Oh yeah, absolutely. actually, it's almost empty without it being there. So what I'll do maybe is just make a variation of it instead. Yeah. Maybe I'll make it hit with the filter different. Yeah, so that we can hear it a little bit more though, the change. Maybe just a tiny bit more. Come on. And maybe I'll pan these as well. Maybe we'll make the first hit hit more to the right, and that second hit more to the left to create just a little bit of movement. I'm going to save those changes. Cool deal. So here's our intro pattern, and we can introduce the others. And that lead is still too loud. Bring that lead sound down a tiny bit more. Yeah, well, we just did Digitakt and MyRack, so that's not really on the schedule anytime super soon, Ted. What I do have for MyRack on the schedule is maybe doing some connecting of it up with the large Eurorack system using Ableton Link in the future. That might be a fun one. 1 year after having bought the Digitakt, chose an Octatrack a month ago, found the workflow with the Toriaz I'm not sure what that last part is. Yeah, I actually had an Octatrack for a very short amount of time. It was the one piece of gear in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that I just didn't gel with. I find working with the Digitakt so easy and so fluid. That like kind of like it's almost like Othello, like it's a minute to learn, a lifetime to master, right? It's a minute to learn though. I mean, meaning you can just get in here and just get going and just start making pattern variations, and once you understand the basics, you're kind of off and running. But with the Octatrack, you know, I found that I'm trying to make a pattern, then I want to make a pattern 2, and I want to add some new sounds, and suddenly you get involved in like there's 4 parts, and each part can have different sounds, but the same part can't have more. It just kind of blew my mind in its workflow. I found its workflow to be like alien technology. I made one jam with the Octatrack, and the Octatrack got sold to help fund the original purchase of my AKAI Force. Yeah, I know a lot of people really love the Octatrack, and if you gel with it, it can do a lot of stuff. But I also find that a lot of people are kind of just really using the Octatrack in a ridiculously simplistic way, because the way that they intend for you to work it is very odd, in my opinion, to say the least. How do you like that squid, Sean? I've taken a look at that as well. I know some friends who have that who say that the pattern generation, where it can like generate notes like in a specific scale, like generate new patterns and whatnot, that's pretty useful. How are you liking this squid? Ooh, yeah, nice. I really like that transition between those two. Ooh, that's nice. All right, let's take a moment here and let me just play for you guys all of the patterns that I've created. It's going to be a little bit odd as we, go through all of these different sonic vibes. Because this is a freestyle bank, I'm not really like adhering to one particular genre, and we really jump around from like, bass music to chill. But here's the first pattern in the bank so far. This one's called Violetta. Need to make a variation on that one still. Need to make a variation on all of these pretty much. Here's another pattern. This one's called Knock It. more of a bass music vibe on this one. Pretty much trying to create something for everybody here, you know. For those who like the big beats and for those who like, you know, the subtle, chilled out beats and pretty much everything in between. This one's called Nightfire. To do a little bit of adjusting on these levels overall. Like for instance, what I'll do probably is when I'm getting closer to finishing the bank is like record everything out like one after each other and see if anything is like, oh, that pattern's a little bit, you know, too loud compared to the rest of them, and go in and even out some of these things a little bit more just to try to get everything super smooth and consistent. Yeah, but I really like this pattern. This is nice. Take out that lead and just groove it. I tried to make these patterns, you know, so that they have quite a bit of potential to go a lot of, you know, different directions, depending on what the end user might be about, or whether they're mixing it with outside hardware, you know, or a digitone, for example. Another pattern. Oh, we skipped one. This one's called The Flow, and it's 140 beats per minute. A little bit louder there. I'm gonna have to tame that one. The levels are a little off on this one. All right. So you can hear what I mean about the variation from slow, chilled out stuff like this one here. Coming in at 120, just super chilled. Lots of good, you know, it's me, so there's going to be a lot of super chilled dub in here as well. Ooh, arpeggiator per track. I like the sound of that, Sean. Great for everything except the drums. Right on. Oh, no updates for 2 years. No song mode or no pattern changing. Wow, that seems to, I don't know what these companies are doing with the no song mode. I mean, everything is coming out and everybody's like, is there a song mode? And they're like, no, no song mode. I don't understand. It seems to be a consistent request from the communities of pretty much everything. The AKAIs don't, the AKAI Force rather came out with no song mode. There's no song mode in the Digitakt. There's there is a song mode in the Poly Tracker. I was going to say the Tracker. I think a few of the boxes I have in here as well. You know, again, that no song mode. I don't know what that is. Companies need to get with that song mode for sure. Let's see what else is in here. There's another pattern. This one, oh, I love this one. This is a really funky one. I called this one Dubomite, as in sort of those black exploitation movies from the 70s. Dolomite. I don't know, I'm really revealing my age there if anyone knows those movies. But this has got that funky kind of Dolomite swagger, if you get my drift. It also uses that sort of, you know, fake sidechain pumping pad technique that we used earlier this afternoon. Oh, I really like that one. Here's one. This is another fast up-tempo pattern. This one's called Airlock. Hey, what's happening, Robert? Thanks for tuning in. A little bit different, you know, as we scroll through these different, you know, genres and whatnot, and these patterns have different, like, you know, sonic characters to them. I find that as you scroll through pretty quickly, it sounds a little strange sometimes because we're going through these different genres. You certainly wouldn't, you know, have that many genres that close together on an EP, if you get my drift. Go to the next bank. Here, this pattern. This one's called Merc Dub, another dub pattern. Ooh, super chilled. Yeah, let's just listen to this one for a sec. That's sounding really nice. I'm using a lot of the probability in a lot of these patterns, so that as the pattern plays, you know, over and over, it's not the exact same pattern every time. It changes and kind of moves and breathes a little bit. Yeah, Sean said it great right there, you guys. All these boxes, and what one doesn't do, the others will cover that. You said it exactly. Exactly that. Let's check out this one. This one's called Door Number 9. What's behind door number 9? Some interesting melodics on this kind of a trip-hop groove here. Alright, next up we've got a pattern called Inspector. This one's 146 beats per minute, a little bit faster. Yep, that's what we're doing today, Martin. These are all samples that I've made and either recorded directly into the box or imported directly into the box. This is a new sound bank that I'm making. Since they released a brand new update just this last week, we can now export patterns to a backup file where we weren't able to before. For the 7 sound banks that I have for the Digitakt right now, they're just sounds only, and they're set up in a way so you can scroll through the sounds super easy because there's not like thousands of sounds included in your Digitakt. So if you want that, you grab my pack and then you've got, you know, over 1,000 sounds to write with. And so that's what we're doing today. Is these are all brand new sounds and samples that I've recorded in from the gear in here. A few from my sound banks in Ableton, and all brand new sounds and all brand new patterns. And this bank is going to be called Freestyle Mixtape Volume 1 because there's no like specific genre. It's just a freestyle of different genres, and I should have it available for sale like in about a week or two, I believe. I got the cover art already finished and I am ready to go. Just need to finish writing the included patterns and finish loading it up with a few more sounds. Hey, thanks, Martin. Alright, let's check out this pattern here. Another dub pattern. This one's called Dub Mata. That's awesome. Sean says that importing MIDI files on this Squid is easy and the export to Ableton is even easier. That sounds fantastic. He also says that with the Squid you have to have hands-on all the time and keep performing. Yeah, right on. Hey Carlos, thanks for tuning in. Okay, was that the last one? No, we've got a few more in this bank. Oh, I like this one. This is a more of an up-tempo one. This one's called Chase Me. Another pattern here. Oh, this is one that we just worked on, so let's skip that. We've heard that one already. Let's go to Bank C and check out these patterns. This one's called Damn Thick. It must be damn thick. Need to do that final adjustment on some of these levels as they're coming through a little bit hot sometimes. Here's one that we made a few minutes ago. This one was called Invasion, thanks to Brett in the chat, I believe. Completely different vibe than a lot of the other patterns. Got that cool vocally formant type of sound here that we sampled out of the Euro rack at the beginning of today's session. Yeah, I like the way that one came out. All right. Let's see what else we've got in this bank. We've got a pattern here called Cybertown. It's a bit of a slower one at 105 beats per minute. That one sounds pretty nice. I'm not sure I understand your question, Robert. Any new mixes for Digitakt and Digitone? I'm not sure I understand the question. We're just working on a sound bank today that I'm going to be selling for the Electron Digitakt. I don't have any plans to be working with the Digitone anytime super soon. Here's another pattern from this bank. This one's kind of funky. It's called Liam Chill. Kind of like I thought if Liam from The Prodigy were to try to write something a little bit less hectic, he might come up with something like this. Let's see here. We've got another pattern in here. Oh, this one's called Cuckoo Dub. I made this one last night, actually, and I really like the way this one sounds. I think this one sounds like if, I don't know if you guys know the YouTuber Cuckoo, but he's got a really unique style in his writing, and I thought that this was something that, like, he might write if he was trying to write, you know, dubby kind of music. I like this one, has kind of how it has that jumpy melodic feel, but also those, you know, really typical Dean kind of dub vibes to it as well. Oh, I got you. Thanks for asking, Robert. No, I don't have any new music created with the Digitakt and the Digitone. I've just been working the last couple of weeks on this bank in the Digitakt. Let's check out this pattern. This one's a bit of an up-tempo pattern called Parkour. You can probably guess why. Alright, let's look at one more pattern here, and I think it's the untitled pattern that we put together a few minutes ago. Ooh, yeah, really cool down-tempo dubby vibes on this one. Hey, thanks, Martin. Ooh, yeah, this is a nice one that we put together. Oh, right, it has that interesting sample that we took from my SERUM Soundbank and used in a really unique way here. Yeah, I like this one a lot. There's a few of the ones in here that I think are really kind of special and maybe stand out over the other ones. I love doing projects like this, you know, where I'm writing all of these different patterns and really trying to challenge myself to be creative, you know, with the same set of sounds. For instance, you know, in bank one here, I've already got, you know, 8 patterns. In bank 2, I've already got, you know, in bank 2, we've already got, like, you know, another 7. I just need to get that 8th pattern rather going. And then in bank 3, you know, we've got another, 7 patterns. So, I mean, I'm over 20 patterns currently. And each of these will have 2 versions of each pattern. And then I've still got, you know, 20 more sample slots that I can load more sounds in. So I think we're probably, you know, going to be getting into, like, the D banks with this the amount of patterns that come with this particular bank. Super cool that Electron has done this update. My original intention when I made those 7 sound banks for the Digitakt way back in the day now, was to be able to do this kind of thing and make patterns with those sounds, but they did not have in place a system for us to back up and save the patterns per se, and it was a real chore just to get those sounds out too, as a matter of fact. But now with the most recent update, I'll be able to export all of these sounds and all of these patterns to just one file, and anybody who owns the Digitakt can just load these up into their Digitakt and get inspiration from them. Write new things with the sounds, disassemble these grooves, remix these grooves, make these grooves into complete songs if they want all those fun things. Okay. Let's see here. So today we've sampled into the Digitakt from both the Eurorack and also from the SERUM virtual synthesizer. We made a couple of patterns from scratch today inside of the Digitakt, and we also checked out, the patterns that are currently existing inside of this bank, which again is going to be just a freestyle bank of lots of different genres, not one genre specifically. So I'm trying to get as much variety kind of packed into this bank as I possibly can. I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. We've been going for almost 3 hours. I really appreciate, you guys tuning in and hanging out with me on the stream. Let's see, we've got a couple more notes here on the Squid. I actually would like to share that with you guys. Sean says that the Squid has a dedicated app that uploads the MIDI files or exports the MIDI files and then straight into Ableton. Even 16 patterns per pad. Wow, that sounds really powerful. 16, what is there, 16 pads? Hey, thanks, Connor. I appreciate that. Oh, hey, thank you very much, Robert. I appreciate that. Yeah, the Sonicware FXM delayed at the factory. Yes, I actually have one of those on pre-order, Martin, and I'm super excited to dig into that. I'm really looking forward to that coming around. That's going to be fun, and I'm hoping to create some like kind of chiptune-y things to sample into the Digitakt from that as well. I've also got, I'm really excited about, because you said July, and that sort of triggered it off. I've got a pre-order for one of these handheld tracker devices called the M8, which looks really, really amazing and powerful. Sort of along the same lines of the workflow in the Digitakt and in the Poly-In tracker, in that it's an 8-track device that's heavily sample based. It does have some built-in sequencers. I'm sorry, like synthesizers rather, and it has an emulation of the Mutable Instruments braids module inside of this little handheld tracker, so that looks really amazing. I've been in communication with Dirty Wave, who are making that M8, and I've actually created a factory library for that handheld tracker instrument as well, and donated that to them so that all users of that new tracker are going to have like another 800 plus sounds to work with, courtesy of Electronisounds. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. I don't have a lot of experience with that tracker workflow, but these are all, sort of really similar boxes. Anything with an 8-track workflow and a really heavily sample-based workflow, I mean, that's, kind of my bag, if you guys know what I mean. So I'm really looking forward to that as well as that XFM. Let's just see here. 16 pads, 16 tracks, and 16 sequences per track. Yeah, see, that sounds really powerful and awesome. I bet you're doing some great stuff with that, Sean. Right on. Yeah, it's shipping late. That's a bummer, Martin. I think there's just a really big global chip shortage right now. It's from what I've heard, basically. A lot of the manufacturers are kind of on sort of like back order. I guess the COVID thing kind of put a lot of people like not at the factory making the chips. And then from what I heard, we had 2 major fires at 2 major chip manufacturers over in Japan or something just recently, which really put things on like serious hold. So a lot of things I think in the near future are just going to be keep pushing back and pushing back a little bit. Hopefully they'll be shipping that in July and not August or September. We can only just sort of hope for the best there. All into Ableton with a click. Yeah, that's awesome, especially that Ableton integration right on. Because you could, hopefully be able to write those patterns in the squid itself as well and get really hands on and then transfer that stuff to the DAW. And then you're writing in a completely different way, than just sitting with the mouse for hours on end. Hey, can you please make a video using initial audio slice VST? Which VST is that? Initial audio. It's not ringing a bell all of a sudden. I'm not doing a lot of videos with VST stuff these days. Because to be honest, guys, like I just have a really worn out mouse finger. I've been making, sample content and editing samples for like 20 years in the, tens of thousands. And my mouse finger is really, if I sit here for, 10, 15 minutes, it starts to really hurt a lot, you know what I mean? So that's one of the reasons why I've been doing so much with hardware in here these days. Actually, I do have a VST video on the schedule to do this next week, but I can't really say anything about that at this time. But yeah, that's why I'm not doing more like Ableton content and more VST content at this time. It's just because the finger is kind of a little bit more worn than I would prefer it to be to do more of that kind of content. Hey, thanks, Martin. Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm gonna, I guess, let you guys say goodbye to each other in the chat, and we are going to call it today. It's been just about almost 3 hours. Let's see here. What can I maybe put on as an outro pattern? How about this? Nope, maybe this? Yeah, cool. Let's put a little pattern on. We can just sort of chat for a second here. I want to let everyone know also that I've got a really special stream planned for, I want to say, July 11th. My good friend Trovarsi is coming to the studio. I'm actually having a guest in the studio for the first time, and she's going to bring a little Euro rack system, and we're going to combine our clocks together and potentially put something together in real time on a live stream. And I'm really excited about that and to share that with you guys. It's going to be the first time that I've had somebody over to the studio, and the first time that I will have had a guest on a live stream. So that's going to be super special one. July 11th, I believe, is that date. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Digitakt and modular case. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I've got a lot of stuff on the schedule for combining Digitakt with the Eurorack, because I've finally, after about a year or so now, come up with a way to sync the Digitakt to the entire system in a way that makes sense to me and allows me to do a lot of really creative stuff. And I want to share that with you guys on a future stream as well. So yeah, so we've got lots of stuff coming up. Lots more Eurorack content, lots more MyRack content, tons more Digitakt content as always. And I'm definitely a Digitakt kind of guy. It's my favorite, box to work with in here, you guys. I've got one here, and there's also, another one over here as the, sort of main, driving force now behind the clock system in my Eurorack. And I'll get into that deeper in another stream. We're not going to get all geeky right now about talking about Eurorack out of nowhere, but just want to let you guys know that we are going to be having a guest, and it is going to be a super, super fun stream. We're both really excited to share that with you guys. I believe July 11th again. Okay, so I'm just going to check in with the chat and make sure that I'm not missing any last-minute questions. Yeah, that Trovarsi guest stream is going to be awesome. I'm so stoked, you guys. Yeah, I'm sure he won't mind the extra attention. He'll be fine. He's been super cooperative today. He's just sleeping. All right, cool deal, you guys. I appreciate you all hanging out and hanging with me on these streams and whatnot. And for those who participated in the chat and the suggestions and stuff, thanks for that as well. I really appreciate that. Sometimes, running all of the technology and still trying to be creative in real time can be a little bit challenging, as you may imagine. All right, but until next time, you guys. Thanks very much for watching, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot. All right, was it this one here? Yeah. All right. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next Sunday.